We are doing. Wait, what does it say here? Hang on. Oh, okay. We are doing a Pomodoro for SketchUp or how to communicate with designers and front end engineers. And we're going to learn a couple of things we'll figure out at the end. But if you could share your screen, that would be great.
Okay. I will do that.
And it'll really just be a lot of it'll just be as far as in communication. We'll start off with we'll start our first Pomodoro off with going through. Let's see here. Well, actually, this is the overall gist of it. We want to define what success is, and then work our way backwards to where we are right now. And that, a lot of people project as far as what they can do and build, but that typically winds up working out the best that I've seen. Because when you're building something new, I mean, you could say, "Oh, I'm building this, and I've done it 1,000 times before," but I've never really seen two things that are exactly alike being built.
Mm-hmm.
So now, what we want to do and say is what we'd love, or really with the end, and we can't really skirt it, is that we have a mobile initiative, we have a tablet initiative, and we have a desktop initiative for within the site. That's just how you build modern websites from a front end perspective, which is great. I'm going to open up the sketch file here. And wait, what is it? Oh, it's a fish behind me. Okay. I was like, what? Good things come to those who bait. Okay. So you've decorated your booth very interestingly here, at least.
Yeah.
So if we can zoom in a little bit, and besides even zooming in, what's the name of this file?
The file?
Yes.
Sensible website 110915 v4.
Okay, so what does 110915 mean?
I don't know.
Because
I would think it was a date, but it definitely isn't, because that's not the date that this was last modified or anything. So I'm not sure of how they named it.
So the very first thing, let's go back to the most recent sketch file, or wherever you got a link to this, maybe somewhere in Slack, and we'll see.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that when the first confusion that even makes me go like, Shaggy, is like when you get this file in Sketch, it comes across as let's see here. Let me share my screen as well. All right. And when you get this file, it comes across as, let's go to mine. So like this right here, right? You see the one that you sent me here? So I've already just started disregarding the file names just from instinct.
Mm-hmm.
Because of this right here, right? So
yeah.
When I see that, number one, I don't know if that's September 11th or if that's November 9th for the first thing, because one thing you have to throw out about me, I use actually European timestamps, and even in my clocks, they're all. So if you look up here, you see my clock up here?
No, I don't.
You see my mouse?
Yeah, I can't see that part of it.
I couldn't see my clock, but on my clock, it's wait a minute. Wait a minute. Where did I go to if I wanted? Oh, I just go right to change the timestamp. So on my clock, this says 11/1/2016. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
So mine's in my time that I'm used to is day, month, year, or year, month, day to be precise. And then the time being in 24-hour military timestamp. Actually, I usually go off of GMT time. But then even that being said, this is a strange, to some Americans it might be strange, right? But but here this is even a little bit more perplexing, because then that means that this is month, day, year, right? Okay, I get it, because that is how a lot of Americans write month, day, year. That's true. So that would be
Right.
November 9th, 2015.
But
even
the thing
that
is that
means
when this was, I don't know. I mean, I guess it might be, that might be what it is. I'm not sure, but there are multiple versions as well.
right, because clearly there's at least 3 other versions, right? But based off of this. So what we're doing is, number one, we're getting better at revisioning, because we got the Google Drive and things sorted out, right? But with the Google Drive, which I just got access to this last week, which is why I was like, sure, we'll just use the PDF and we don't really need anything else, so we get the sketch file out. That was a wild assumption. But this isn't anything bad or good. Again, this is just setting up conventions that we want to use that makes transferring and handing off things a lot easier. We haven't done anything that isn't reversible just yet, or famous last words. I'll let as we talk along, let Nina or Philip or even yourself tell us if we have or not. But there's with this, whenever there's a file sent to me in this format, I've already started getting confused. And when I got the first ones from the Drive, which one have I been going off of? That's actually a good thing to figure out.
Yeah, I was a little confused as well.
So look at this. And this right here seems to have been edited then. That's kind of weird. Right, so this is the most recent version of the file that I've been using, V3-1. I was a little bit strange about using this because I already thought I was out of sync just because of the date.
Right.
Okay, and where did I get this from? I believe. Yes. There you have it. So I got this one right here. And when did you get the 4?
I'm not sure. I might have gotten it before then, but I think I was just confused because of how they were in the Drive.
Precisely. So they were
But that was, I mean, I didn't do enough investigation because I didn't have Sketch at that point, so I didn't open them up.
Right, but now you do, which is really cool. So that helps out tremendously, because what's in your head as far as how things are laying out, we'll be able to use Sketch as a communication tool to really go back and forth. So we really want to approach this for communication, or let's call it communication for communication with digital assets, if you will. Because the code is fairly easy. Like, you make one change of code, and like, I'll show you my screen over here. We'll go to marketing. There we go. So, like, for instance, here's the marketing site right here. There seems to, right, I merged it, but there's a CSS pull request that's coming in here. Lizzie hasn't reviewed this one yet. 96 files were changed. Okay, yeah, I must have did a lot of work. And so with code, like this file, you see this right here, it says server.js up here. And on the left is what's usually removed, and on the right is what's added. And this right here, this is just all that. By looking at this, you're to assume it's a new file because there's nothing over here for the removed. And so Git is actually able to track that. But if you look as well, Git's able to track assets too. So now I don't know what the maximum asset size Git tracks, but I'm not even going to look it up, because then that would assume that everybody knows how to use Git. And we don't want to make that assumption, especially the closer we get towards design assets. So really what we're talking about is source control and revisioning for the things the assets that we have. Now we're getting, now at least I'll tell you, we're much, much better than we were a week or two ago. even up till now. So that means we're getting better and better every week at it. But last week was really when we kind of got our at least Drive stuff situated together, and even like where our fonts are and getting those all lined up. And also there was a little confusion with your side with the, well, not confusion, I don't want to say, is that you don't know what you don't know, right? So we have these files here.
Yeah, I should have looked into it more though and made sure that that was the most updated file. So I'm sorry about that.
There's, hey, Lee, hey, buck her up, Buttercup. There's no really apologies. I just say, you kind of, there's no apologies when the people around you wouldn't put you down for being human. And I'm definitely, I have that mentality of it, right? It's like, we don't know. And the fact that we're attempting to do something means that we're not lazy. So that's half the battle right there. Then it's like, how do we now that said, how do we figure out how to wrangle up these digital assets really? And my suggestion, at least, is can we not put anything date related in the title of the asset?
Yeah.
Or even version related, because you might even come to figure out that might be superfluous. Maybe you can put a version in it, but definitely not revision numbers. So you can have a V3, V2, V1. But when you're doing V3-1, usually there's something that we can put it in that'll take care of the revision history for us, because all this really is just a really big 182 megabyte file.
Yeah, I think that's why we need to fully switch to Dropbox.
Does Dropbox have all of this?
Yeah, because then we could just, like, essentially, Nina could have Dropbox on her computer and she could just be working out of a file, and Dropbox has versions, so you could always revert back, but there would just be one file instead of like 5 versions of the file.
Yeah, because this is garbage. I'm just throwing it out there as far as
Google Drive is like really not a good. I really think we need to switch fully to Dropbox, not just like have Dropbox archiving our stuff from Google Drive. I think we need to like really switch over, because then you can basically, the way that it works is it's like a normal file folder on your computer. So you can be working out of it constantly. Even when you're offline, you can be working out of that file. And then, so like copy as well, like we could just be working out of it, and then it would just update when you're like on the internet and stuff like that. So, and then there's version history, but you don't have to have like multiple versions, multiple documents that are the same thing.
Agreed.
So then there would just be one file that said Sensible website. And that's it. And it would always be the latest. It would always be the latest.
Yeah, so we got that. And there's your kittens. I'll look at those later. Thanks for sending me the cats. And then now you sent me this afternoon. So this is the actual updated thing. Or notice, and even the last sentence I just said makes no sense. So that means I'm already a bit confused a little bit, because I said it's the updated thing, and basically there's no subject in that sentence at all. Well, there is one, but you don't know it. It's ambiguous.
Yeah. That's the latest one that's on the drive.
Okay. Oh, okay. There's this. So I have to go over there to this. Does this process not happen in Dropbox?
No, none of this is going to happen in Dropbox. None of this.
I got to switch.
You go to your
Get accounts.
Finder on Dropbox. That's all that happens is you go to Finder.
So there's no preview, so I can download this now. Google Drive can't download it anyway. Okay. Wait for it. So that's going to probably take about a handful of minutes, I would suspect. Oops. But either way, nonetheless, I'm assuming there's just minimal updates. I mean, critical for sure, but minimal updates. So I think we've taken care of the naming convention for the files, and I think we might throw away the baby with the bathwater, but we probably want to talk with Christian to determine like pricing and such with Dropbox and things like that.
As far as I know, he just made this is a little bit off topic, but he just made an update on Asana that said that Dropbox is now logged on, and that we're just archiving Google Drive to Dropbox and keep using Google Drive. But I'm just going to recommend that we actually switch to Dropbox, because I think it will be a million times easier for everybody that way.
Yeah. please, and I know Christian will probably look at this, or we'll drop this link in the room. But clearly, there's some pain there that we can really that we're stabbing ourselves in the eye with. We could totally stop doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's cut out. Okay, you're back. Nice.
Cool.
So then you can still see my screen, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to, we've gotten over the name. Now we can actually open the file, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we can actually open the file, and let's say we open this file here. So what I was working with that I was getting was, see what it says pre-homepage and homepage?
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I was getting as the homepage. But not I even, it's really both Lizzie and I.
Yeah, and that's the old Neo version of the homepage that was kind of there for reference, but is not the new design.
Correct. So the thing is that why is it? I guess we're a little bit of confusion. And keep in mind, the best part is we didn't do anything on this page as far as markup and all of that stuff. So that's awesome. That is what the PDF saved us from, for sure. Because if you would have started from the sketch file, we definitely would have had 7 pages instead of 6. But the real question is that this pre-homepage, and there's homepage, and is it for me, why sensible, how it works. So it looks like kind of there was a little confusion here, and then there was understanding getting closer to these here, and that's clear because ironically, because there's question marks at the end of these, and it seems like these are more understood as far as what was being developed here, and this one was a little bit more in limbo-ish, a little. But I guess when Lizzie or I look at homepage versus pre-homepage, it's like, oh well, wait a minute. Well, we've actually been working on the pre-homepage, right? And we have not touched a homepage, but then Elise hooked it up by saying that this is irrelevant.
Yes.
But if we were to use that as, say, a reference, right, then where is it? Then the thing that we do is we just basically open up our pages. You see what I did there? Oh, and also move this, say, down to here in order.
Yeah.
I was going to say all the way up to the top, and can even do this. But what I'll add for consistency, Elise, is why wouldn't we do that?
Because it's not really a question.
I'm trolling you. But why wouldn't we do that? Why wouldn't we do that? It's actually a 50% real question, 50% troll.
Oh, well, I mean, homepage isn't a question. And also, it doesn't really need a title, I suppose.
But you know what? Homepage is a question. You know why?
Why? Oh, no.
Do you know why it's a question?
Oh, no, I don't. Why?
Well, because if we look here, this is actually the code here, which won't hurt your eyes too much with it, my friend. But when you name things properly, things make sense to even people who aren't people who write code, right? So if we go to site in here, or actually, I just go to GitHub and look at that. That's much prettier, at least. All right, so we're going to GitHub here, and we'll go to here, and we'll go to our site. So here's our marketing site, right? With all our markup. And of course, you're familiar with the doubling of the Jade and the HTML and such. And the CSS is just actually over here in this pull request here. Because it's always good to sort of keep features and concerns taken care of within the application. But if we go to within our site, this is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So I bet the farm there's 6 pages here or 6 Jade pages that rendered out 6 HTML pages. All right. And there's an about page. And I don't know if we called it about because about was actually, I think, why sensible. And then at least you mentioned specifically that we wanted to convert that over to have an ID of, right, we'll have to change it. She said that for the actual bodies that we can change it to whatever we want to, but then here, like the Y, remember you said you wanted it to be explicitly Y sensible. For obvious reasons. Now, there's a little confusion with the first page because we didn't do the hangout like one of our phone booth sessions for the first 3, but we were good enough about it, pun intended. But then we have really the home page. Yeah. As far as the markup is concerned.
Yeah, so I think that's the home. So I mean, about is the all I'm guessing. So when we click in.
Jade, which is really cool, is now at least can kind of look at the Jade and understand and just like without even seeing the sketch file or the PDF, know what page this is. Or even the HTML. Yeah. But I can clearly see from line 21 what page it is.
Yeah, this is the home page.
Okay. So this says about, we could switch that to home. However, the very first page of any website is very important, especially for SEO reasons too.
Yeah.
Is the very first page should always be this guy here. Do you see that name?
Yeah.
And that's just a one-off, but it's always, you get certain niceties if you always start off from index.html, like even Heroku and AWS, they always go and look for an index.html file in your public folder if you have something like that. Certain conventions, we get a lot of niceties about by using that convention. But that said, if we go into our index.jade file here, I have that listed as home. Because I'm leaning towards this direction, but not really. I just know that it's not while I'm here. That's not about. And honestly speaking, the body shouldn't even have any identifier because all of the stuff up here is going to be the same for all of the pages anyway. So there's nothing that really needs to be identifiable. It's just it's the main section. Because if we remember, the main is there's a footer. So this is all of the footer stuff. This is the main stuff. And this is the sort of header and the body. And none of that, the header and the footer don't change. The main actually does. Now, what is this thing called? Is it index? Is it about? Is it home? I think, let me go back to my notes here because we wrote something.
I mean, I would lean towards calling it about or home, but because that sounds nicer, but I guess I don't really know like what is the value of having it called index versus something else. Like if the URL is technically index. Then
oh, wow. No, I'm sorry, Lizzie, listen, she did it right. You called it about. I wrote this note down. All right, I wrote the notes down and she got it right. You did call it about. I'm looking at the notes we had from our first session.
Okay, cool.
Interesting. So do you like about or home? Oh, wait a minute.
I guess it just depends on like what. So from my perspective, if we're calling that section something and that name is supposed to describe what's in it, then about makes more sense to me. But if
that makes sense, I'll take that.
But at the same time, like if this is more about the SEO value and there's like a reason why we would want it to say home or index because that's what this page is like recognized as. I mean, I guess I don't really know necessarily like the consequences.
Well, here's the answer to that, right? It's not like it changes anything. You only get like an extra kick of horsepower or 3.
Right.
You know, anytime we want to, that we can get it. It's not something you want to think about in retrospect. It's something you want to always be thinking about as you're progressing along. And a lot of people don't think about these things early up front like we're doing now. Like this stuff that we're doing takes care of a ton. All of the things that we think about and we talk about on these calls here or on these phone booth sessions, if you will, this is what somebody would say, hey, I made a silver bullet for a WordPress and just stick this in and it'll fix all your ails. And it's like it does, but it doesn't do this, which is critically important, which is naming things by identifiers. And also, did you know that a lot of search engines will start with the index of the site? So no matter what the technology is, whether it's PHP, HTML, or whatever, it'll start from the index and attempt to try to spider a website from that index page. There's still a lot of search engines that do that, actually.
Okay.
So that's a benefit that you get from index.
Yeah, I mean, definitely we should have it the index, but as far as the main ID, I don't know. Does it like?
The main is that's our prerogative.
Okay.
I say that the convention is typically that the main. This is what the title or the actual name of the file is. Is a great convention that I've used. That's a strong opinion, weakly held, open to suggestions, even from you, Elise. And the index is just the one-off.
Right. So, I mean, I guess, like I said, I don't really know if we call them, if the main ID is index, is that better from an SEO perspective than if it's about?
No, this index stuff is all mostly server and web crawler related, which SEO is about too as well. But it gets more value by being explicit, verbose, and articulate in the markup.
So this is more for like having the ID is good for SEO, but this is more about like naming things right for us.
Correct. Because what winds up happening, I'll show it to you with the actual style stripped off here.
Yeah.
Hold on for a second. Let me show it with the styles stripped off. I think it's.
I mean, if it's also though like it's a better convention to just name it according to that, then.
Let's see here. What's also localhost 3000. Nice. So what winds up happening if I say index.html? So this is the site with all of the styles stripped off right now, right? I disabled the CSS. You see, this is the page right here. This is why at this phase I like looking. A lot of the content related things I always like looking at sometimes with the style stripped off and with them on, because when the styles are on, I miss certain things like spelling errors and grammatical errors and things like that. But now with this way that this is set up, here's one of the benefits that you get. This is for pretty much all websites. So you see where it says index.html up here, up in the URL.
I can't see that part, but yes, I know what you're talking about.
Up here, you see it better? I can just remove that,
and it's still the same place. Yeah,
that's something. That's just a side effect from web servers for like the past 30, 40 years.
Right.
And also it's not necessarily a newer engine like a Google. But something like a Yahoo or maybe even a Bing would still use the whole opening up the index and falling down the sitemap from there.
Right.
That said, we can do whatever the heck we want to, but then typically if we named it about, then the URL would actually redirect.
I think it should be the index. It should be indexed. Yeah, definitely the URL should be indexed. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Yeah, because from a domain name perspective and from as far as like a semantic web, is that if this is the about page, then really when you go to the home page, it should be a redirection to the about.
Yeah. I didn't ever mean for it to be anything other than index.
No, no worries there. But you don't know. This is a breaking of the rule, because if this wasn't the index, then we would definitely be calling it about.
Right.
Yeah, that's as long as we're clear about that. But so this is one of those, we know the rules, so we know how to break them.
Okay.
So that takes care of that there, and I'll go back to the sketch file, and then we'll can hand it off to you for these because our Pomodoros here ending in a moment. So now this home page question mark really, that's the structure of what the site is up here in the pages, correct?
Yeah.
And so do you see the intent it expresses by having all, like if I'm looking at this and these are the pages, then through a convention, we can say, okay, the first one is the index.
Yeah, we might want to call it home just because of, I don't know, just because I think there is like a specific kind of format of like a home page and like what you're trying to do with a home page.
So that's perfectly fine, but then someone would have to relay the intent to the developer. Mm-hmm. Hey, this is really the about page. And that maybe what I think you're saying is that.
Yeah, maybe. Let's just do that.
But we should not map things. Like if it's like, okay, well, in the sketch file, we call it home. Over here, we call it about. And so it has nothing to do with Sketch or Jade or HTML. It has to do with people actually talking to each other. Mm-hmm. So it starts off with the pages, right? And naming things. And this is pretty cool here because you actually, I could see, because really it seems like I bet the title, the H1 is being used as the title of the page, which is totally cool for the pages in that regard. Mm-hmm. It's just when you get to, let's go back to the home, where you get to down deep into the swing of things. So like this guy right here. So you see where it says like, is this for me? Why sensible? How does it work? Cost questions. Mm-hmm. Well, this is oh crap, that wasn't good. Well, you see how this is actually a group. Mm-hmm. And within the group, let's see here. Within a group, you see there's some text. Mm-hmm. Right? Makes sense. Did you know, by the way, too, with Sketch, you can actually, and this is, I hope Nina's listening to this one, this is actually where the, in Sketch, you can have a hover state. You can set something to an element to a button, have a hover state, and when you mouse over it, you can actually see like the different states within your button from within Sketch.
That's pretty cool.
No, let's see Photoshop do that.
Yeah.
But I said it to say this. These text areas are great, but I think what's happening here, yeah, that one, the questions. So you see that? You see this here? You see this here? You see this here? You see that? What's a little bit better of a design is where do you see which one do you think is the largest?
The largest?
Yeah.
Oh, like the longest. How does it work?
Longest, yes. How does it work? Perfect. So if that's the longest, let's just make an assumption here. Let's just do that. Say that that's that. But it should, so let's say that that's the width of that is 167. Let's make that 170 just for giggles. So that's 170, right? Mm-hmm. Now, there's a couple of ways to think about this. You have the actual.
Oh no, you're cutting out a little bit.
Make that one 170.
I couldn't hear like the last 10 seconds of what you said.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. So you take the smallest one. You see it says 184. So now the smallest one is larger than the largest one actually. Mm-hmm. And you see how there's like fractional numbers here?
Right.
That winds up being it's not bad for here, but as far as laying things out, that'll wind up being a nightmare in Sketch. You see it says size there. If that was in position, you want to get that to a hard number like ASAP.
Right.
So what was our size there for the how does it work?
This is how like you're literally taking these numbers out to create the CSS.
Oh, well, literally taking those out. More so the size, not so much the position.
Right.
But I'm just giving you the position. But as far as the size, literally those numbers.
Okay.
I mean, like exact one-to-one mapping. So then it say that's what was our width of our, how does it work? 170, right? So let's make this 170. And this is just the experiment that we're doing here. Let's move this out of the way. Let's move this out of the way. So we have this, how does this work? And we have a cost. So this is the cool part. Well, actually, the cost, it would be a little weird because technically speaking, if this was a link, if you will, or a button, then you probably have this centered somehow.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, that's if this container or this box, if you will, that it's in, which is really nothing but a hyperlink, needs to be a fixed width. That's usually determined upon the.
Oh, I'm losing you again. Just lost you. Hello? Okay.
Hello?
Awesome, you're back.
Oh, I made it back in. Holy crap. It's so cool. Nice. Oh, nice. Okay, kill off the recording. So are we, can you see my screen back? I'm tethering from my phone, actually, by the way.
I can't see your screen right now.
The Portfolio Me Wi-Fi went down, so.
Oh, I want the Alley one.
Right, yeah, Portfolio Me not conked out.
Okay.
Can you see my screen?
No, I can't see your screen.
You've got to be kidding me right now.
Oh, now I do.
Oh, wow.
Now I see it.
Okay, so I have to be concerned. I have to be concerned of lag. Do you see what I'm talking about the spacing? If you have them all equal size.
Yes. It doesn't really work.
Now,
I want the spacing to be equal, not
do you do left justification or wait? Let me actually break it down the right way. Really, let's go ahead and if you notice, you see these red lines that are starting to pop up all over the place. This is the sweet spot of Sketch. Like this, my friend, is where everything links. All of the pieces to the puzzle link up. I'm talking about not from Sketch to front end design with CSS, but I'm talking about Sketch to iOS development, Android development. Like they literally have the exact same lines and numbers. And let me show you how to use it. This is when you're going to be like, Sketch is the bomb. So we're going to say we have two navigation links. How does it work in cost, right? Mm-hmm. If I hold option down and move over to the next one, what does it say in between?
25.
That's my margin.
Nice.
And now that should like open up your whole mind to say, oh, I can totally figure out how to lay out an entire website.
Yeah, because we just want to make the actual size of each of those things like as small as possible and then make the margins the same.
Right, absolutely. So then the designer would sit there and say, okay, well, we don't want to do this having them be equal size. Mm-hmm. Maybe we can do it that they don't have to have a size at all, right? So maybe they're like that. And maybe that there is just a consistent 25 pixel margin in between the both of them. Mm-hmm. Or not even the both of them, at least all of them.
Yeah.
So if I go here and I go over to here, what does that margin say?
43.
Okay, so if I go here and I go over to here, what's that margin say? You can't read it.
Yeah.
Because
it's negative.
Exactly. Yeah, we actually blew up Sketch just now.
Yeah.
And let's see here. If I go from here to here, it's 25, right? Mm-hmm. If I go from here to here, it's 171. Mm-hmm. But now it's real. So like I'll even take this header here. So I can see that there's like this area that's being selected here. And this is a group as well called navigation, right? And actually, see, that's what, see, here's what's a little bit ironic because, okay, so there's an iPad here, but like as I'm working downward into this file, where's the iPad? It's probably down at the bottom of the page somewhere. And there it is right here. So I bet anything that this is going to be like way down here somewhere. I'm just going to throw this way down here just so it's not up here with what we're trying to do.
Uh-huh.
And so then now we are left with this. But ironically, we have this group. That's the navigation. Mm-hmm. And the navigation is not the navigation. Mm-hmm. So really what we'll do is we'll take this group and we'll call it navigation. Mm-hmm. But if you get across a designer who actually can program a little bit of HTML, they would probably call that nav.
Yeah.
Because when we go to the actual markup for this guy here,
that's what we're going to call it.
Look at line 8 through line 18. Or really line 8 to tell you the truth. Mm-hmm. But that's neither here nor there. Really, the intent when you say navigation or header navigation, and so I was kind of looking at this guy here. Well, let me start from the beginning. So this blue is a background, right?
Okay.
It's to be assumed that this is the entire background of the entire website. So technically speaking, what this is representing is if I did something like, branch am I on? Get branch, my CSS. So what I can do is, let me shrink this down and see, here's where having these external monitors, if you got my link from earlier, helps out a ton, because watch how I'm about to develop this. And I promise you, Elise, this is not going to be too much more painful, but I have to kind of show you a few things. Mm-hmm. So you say where to keep digging and where not to. Mm-hmm. All right. Where are we at here? Oh, where are those? Am I on about? Yeah, I'm on the index. How come my styles aren't showing? Oh, that's kind of weird. Where are they? Oh, I know why. If Jade. It's so weird. Oh well, I think I clicking around branches. I might have broke my branch, but that's neither here nor there. Pay no attention to the live coding example. But do you see this desktop how it says background color for this page? Uh-huh. Well, not really this page, this art board, if you will. Uh-huh. expresses to the implementer of the front end that the entire site needs to be this color.
Okay.
If this needs to be a border, then what would happen is that the main or the header, the image, and our main section would have a border explicitly around it, with it going all the way to the edge of the document, of the artboard, if you will.
Right.
Because what we'll do here is I'm taking the under assumption that this up to where the white starts, that's the maximum width of the website, which is still 1430 because this is 1450. So we have the entire desktop selected. When you open up Sketch, if you want to select the main, the whole artboard, you click the little button on the top. It took me a day to figure that out. And then so there's a size of 1450. But when you go inside of here, and if I select, say, this image right here,
it's 1430.
And actually should be 14. It's actually 1431. It should be 1430. So this, if I were to export this image, this would actually throw off the site by 1 pixel. I was saying if I were to export the image, it would throw off the site by 1 pixel.
Okay.
And that 1 pixel could, I don't know, blow the site up. Who knows? But we have ways around that. Like it's not really as bad. Like it's not bad or anything at all. It's just attention to detail and really, transitioning Sketch. Because really, Sketch is what I've learned is Sketch is a tool. My buddy who uses Photoshop, he's like, I don't like Photoshop, man, and or I don't like Sketch, man. I love Photoshop. I can just do it all in Photoshop. And what he realized was, he's like, oh, you're not supposed to exchange one for the other. Sketch is just a way for you to make your assets web ready, markup ready, position ready to export for any, and really to use as a reference for iOS design, Android design, website design, desktop design, icon design, like Sketch day one. I mean, to the point where Photoshop is now like really chasing their coattails right now as far as this whole artboard layout thing.
Yeah.
So the only thing is that this really needs to be as I'd say not pixel perfect in regards to where things are, but if you have something that like say, it's not really killing any kittens if this stuff's like not pixel perfect, and it shouldn't be because it's responsive, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if this thing is set to be that the max width is 1430, and we use that as an image instead of a background image, and exported this, and it was 1431, our entire layout would blow out.
Okay.
So we'd have to be consistent there, especially when the closer we get to the edge of the screen or the edge of the artboard, if you will, the more pixel precise that we should want to be. Now, what I'd just do is just make this, since this is a background image, I would just clip the entire site to be 1430. But that even said, 1430 is way bigger than we need it to be.
Yeah.
Because it is actually introducing scrolling on my screen.
Right.
I'm going to resize this and see. There should be, all right, when I have my console log open, I resize this. Oh, yeah. I have to bring it to the bottom, I guess. Okay, so let's try to make this 1430, right, Elise?
Mm-hmm.
So 1430. So that's 1430, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So now watch when I try to make it go to 1450. What happened?
You can't.
And why not?
Because your screen is not big enough.
Well, actually, I have an Apple 2014 MacBook Air 13-inch, where it has a fairly decent resolution on it, which should be good enough for pretty much anybody on the web, and it's extra widescreen, right? So what's the experience for someone that has a 11-inch MacBook Air? I wonder what the resolution for that is. Resolution for, why don't you look that one up, Elise? You want to help a brother out?
It's 1366.
1360. And what's a 13 inch? I'm just curious.
Is 1440.
The 13 inch is 1440.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I was kind of close to that. So then you see and can you do me a favor? What's a 15-inch Retina display?
Uh, 2880.
Right. Okay. So that's cool. And let's see, let's see here. What's an Asus 13-inch laptop? Just trying to find something I'm not going to call that company out its mouth because I know that we have some developers on the team that like them. Yeah, that's cool. Sure, let's look at that.
This one?
Because I'd be willing to say that there's no tablet that's 13 inches, right?
Right.
It's a fair enough guesstimation. You could probably want to look up resolutions. The word resolution.
I did, but it...
Well, on this page, I mean, Control Command F.
Oh, it doesn't tell you. Okay, whatever. Let's just go back and go to the Amazon.
What's the resolution on this guy?
1920.
1920. Excellent. So then I think we're pretty good with that 1330, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, or it's 1360, was it? Which one? I don't even remember. What did you say?
1366.
Right. Now, here's the interesting thing. That's for modern computers.
Right.
We really want to know what our demographic is, or should be aiming at what is our demographic. I would think for someone who's, say, doing investments, they're not going to be necessarily fresh out of college, just throwing it out there. Not to say that someone fresh out of college isn't making investments, but you get the point.
Yeah.
Then brings along things like I look at one of my colleagues for like Kittens Play, Edgar. He has a Windows Vista machine. It might even be XP. I'm just throwing that out there.
Mm-hmm.
He has a Windows Vista machine with a 13-inch square monitor, which brings the resolution to be about 1280.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'll show you. Can you go to blockandflow.com, blockandflowapp.com?
Yep, I'm here.
If you look at the gray, if you scroll down a little bit, look at the gray areas. This is the app we're using right now, actually, by the way. If you look at the gray area, that's so you see how there's that. How do you think that looks as far as like width of content on the screen? How does that pass the squint test?
What do you mean by that?
Like the actual main content, the max width. Because if your screen got any bigger, it would still be that size.
Right.
That said, try to shrink your screen down. Try to make it smaller. See what happens.
Stays the same for a while and then it gets wider.
Because now you're looking at the mobile. You're looking at the tablet. Yep.
Okay.
Keep going. Keep going.
Now we're at the mobile.
Not too shabby a parlor trick, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's Lizzie and I's work.
Awesome.
So we know how to do this. However, if we look at, we probably want to look at my screen here. If I go to CD Block and Flow app staging, what are we using here? I'm gonna go to our grid settings app, style sheets, main, home, application footer, desktop, base, grid settings. We have our desktop. So here's the secret sauce, and this file is from Bourbon. We use Bourbon Meat and SAS. We are using it on this project as well, and I love it because it allows you to separate the CSS out the conventions. You remember I showed you earlier with SAS and the variables and all of that. You see this column, gutter, and grid columns area right here? Column and gutter, right? When you go to the sketch file under View, Canvas, Show or Layout Settings, and this is what I show. This is that first time. You probably remember me bringing this up when we first met with Nina back in Neo. We have the total width, number of columns, which is that's a caveat right there. Gutter width, column width. And no rows. So that's set in Sketch. Like what I say, this screen right here and this area right here in the CSS is where the designer and the developer should be married at the hip. I think it might be starting to make a little sense to you there, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So check, what do you see on 12, 13, and 14 here?
I mean, I'm guessing the mobile with tablet and then desktop with.
Right, but you say mobile, but how come there is no mobile?
Because you were mobile first.
And that's why it's called the site width. You get a winner, chicken dinner. And then you progressively go up to the tablet, and then you progressively go up to the desktop. What we were attempting to do, which is kind of good, we were off by, I'd say, like 100 or so pixels and such, is that, let's just be real, we're trying to attempt the desktop version first, and every single place that I'm going to, Elise, and I you know that time when the times when you're trying to find something to validate a statement you're having in your head, but you know it's not true. You're just trying to lie to yourself about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I came to this guy here. Where is it? Defining breakpoints, that's exactly what that is. When you first begin to work on a responsive design, you will define your breakpoints at the exact device which you are looking to target. Most often, these are the smartphone and anything above 1024. Wrong. Instead of being concerned with device breakpoints, the best practice is to design for your smallest viewport first. As you expand that view, there will come a point at which a design looks shit terrible. This is where you add a breakpoint.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I like that idea too, not to start getting like specific devices, but just, there are too many possibilities.
Oh my God, this is Lizzie's favorite image right here. Let's see here.
Wait, where is that?
3 devices. Let's see here. Let's see here. Oh. Where is it? Tell me I'm going to find it. Tell me I'm going to find it. I think I have to look up This Is the Web. Oops. Oh, gosh. Come on. Stop it. Oops. This is the web. Monitors. Why did I put a period there? Am I going to find it? Oh, no. This is the web. Responsive design. Are you gonna? There it is. Found it. This is Lizzie's favorite image for when dealing with trying to design, like exactly what we're facing right now. And you know why our convention is usually pick any 2 or 3, but you can't have all.
Yeah.
And then that way you just throw away all of them, right?
Right.
She said, actually, Lizzie said her favorite one, if I'm not mistaken, is this area, this one right here. and this one right here, the old flip phone.
Yeah.
Because that's when you just like pretty much disable all styles and just throw up your page on there. You should be able to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now that we understand that, that helps us understand where and why and how we set our breakpoints. And then when we actually get into testing on the different devices like these sizes, so this is what I use when developing with Block and Flow. You can go into the Google Chrome Developer Console and click on the little phone icon here. And then you have these devices that you can start checking your sites on. You have Apple, iPhone 4, 5, 6, 6 Plus, BlackBerry, Playbook, like every single device you can possibly think of. Did you know that?
I did not know about that.
That is how you check on every device, my friend.
Okay.
Without having every device.
Right.
That's why I feel.
I knew there were things you could do that, but I didn't know you could do it from Google Chrome Inspector.
Oh yeah, I got stuck in the space once, and I didn't know how to get out of it. But then once I got it out of it, I said, "That's really cool."
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so keep that in mind because that is how you will test the different browser, the different devices without having to have 1,000 devices.
Right.
Yeah, Philip was saying we could use. He got an iPad. And he said we could use it for testing, and I was like, we don't need that. But you don't know what you don't know. He hasn't needed to be exposed to all of this right here yet.
Mm-hmm.
And you turned it off by pressing the same little toggle right there. So before we move forward, what are your thoughts thus far? What are you thinking so far? What's on your mind?
Well, it seems like we need to like adjust the width of this, right?
Well, that's the first thing. Remember our outside interface. We're going to adjust. This needs to be whatever Elise and everyone et al. Coincide to say that this is what it should be, and there you have it. Now, these right here have been thoroughly thought of, but that doesn't mean that they're right for Sensible for line 12, 13, and 14. If you want to write those down. And that's a site width of 320 pixels, a tablet width of 760 pixels, and a desktop width of 1280 pixels.
Okay. Why did you choose those?
Just, I'd say we literally spent about a good half a day with about 10 different people and coming up with the metrics and figuring out where the sweet spot was.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, now that said, that does not mean that that's what's right for Sensible. It's just, but we shouldn't sacrifice. Let's see here. We shouldn't sacrifice rendering on a device because we want to have the content be that max size. We can have it be that max size, but we should be able to do any size we want to technically. But the way that it's laid out now, if I opened up, why are we even talking about this? If I opened up the website on my MacBook Air, I wouldn't get this page. Which page would I get, Elise?
Would you get the tablet? Oh.
Precisely. Precisely.
Okay. So that's also kind of a good reason to have it is.
If there's any overall reason why are we being pedantic about such minuscule numbers, is because immediately if I were to open the site up on my device, the breakpoint for desktop is set at 1440.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, you don't want to think about the number and then anything satisfying downward. It's that's the minimum, and everything will start at that layout, and as you sort of stretch it, make it go in between to the next one, it's only going to hook into the next one when the content looks shitty.
Okay, so if we're saying then that the best way to do this is to make the mobile one see when it starts to look bad, make the tablet one see when it starts to look bad, and then make the desktop one, should we maybe maybe I'm totally wrong on this, but should we maybe implement the tablet version first and see? Where the
what?
think the appropriate breakpoint is, and then base it off of that, off of how it looks, rather than on like devices, maybe.
Well, here's the answer to that. I'd say that desktop, at minimum, it should at least be able to show up on my computer. That's all.
No, I agree. I guess my question then is like, from what I've seen, well, from the really tiny amount of research that I did, it sounds like like we said, the mode of like what people are using is 1366, which is probably what yours is. Well, no, yours is 1440, right?
Precisely.
So,
and right there is why we have before any calculations you have in your head or any rudimentary mathematics, you always want to be thinking even if we're faking it, you want to be thinking as if the content is created first in mobile, and then when the content looks crappy, that's when you want to have the breakpoint. It's designed around the content, not the device. That's the aha moment that I had to have, and you have to have, and anybody who does responsive layout. The minute you get that, and you're like, oh, that's why you start off with mobile, because you keep stretching it out. And the second it looks crappy, that's our breakpoint to the next thing, and that's how you build it. When you build it from the desktop first, which is kind of where we started going down a little bit, and I put the brakes on that, because then no matter what, when you go back to do the mobile and the tablet, you're going to wind up redoing the desktop anyway.
Right. Okay, so I mean, so just basically based on what I've seen, if it's really true that like such an overwhelming majority of people, or not majority of people, but like I think it's like a third are on 1336, and then 66, and then a lot are above that.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that would be a good breakpoint to start with, but coming from that other perspective, I mean, it could be smaller. So maybe, I mean, do you think it's better to like pick one and like fix it now? Or do you think it's better to like see what it looks like? Or should we like put this up on the screen and like see?
Well, here's what we're going to do. What we'll do is, what we should do, and I'm being totally honest about this, we should go for mobile first and then build upwards from there. And you want to know what the best part about this? You might say, oh, well, now we're introducing all of this extra work. Really not. And I'll tell you why. Because the desktop is a superset of the tablet, which is a superset of the mobile. Miss Math Queen, Math Princess, you should understand that one right there for sure.
Yeah.
So what we really are doing is this is one of the aha moments I had in doing this whole sketch to CSS process as well. These grids, which are used for layout, which are not being used for layout. Wait, make sure I'm on the right page because I don't even remember. Yep, I'm on the home, right? Yep, so we're not quite using the grids, because if you see here, like, well, I guess I could buy the centered, because you can always have a centered header and then get that. So that's cool. You don't need layout there. However, the aside, like this guy here, probably, let me see here. That's responsive design. You see how I just snapped it to that grid point on the left? Everything has to be shifted via grid point or via columns. Like, unless it's centered, it's got to snap to a column. So see the difference? Wait, let's see here. There's one, because this is considered in the
could it be, and it couldn't be like snapped to the right of that other column?
Yeah, sure, but it's not even on the column there.
It's not. Yeah.
Like it's between that and that. We can do whatever we want to. At least we're stuck to a column, which is really cool.
Okay.
And as and so this is what Bourbon and Sass give you out of the box. As you're shrinking the site down between breakpoints, if it's multiple columns, it'll try to squeeze the gutter first, not the column. And anything that's attached to a column, it'll try to shrink it down as well. But if you don't use the columns, then we have to explicitly state margin left. Let's find out, actually. 167 px. We'd have to explicitly state the margin, and then we're already like kind of shooting ourselves in the foot in regards to responsive design.
Okay.
Because we're explicitly setting margins, right?
Right.
So
yeah, I see what you're saying. So that's what allows the site to like shift in between the breakpoints, basically, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. We use this tool here. Let's see here. Bourbon Neat.js. So this is neat, Bourbon. This is a framework that's used to make CSS dead simple, but gives you things out of the box like layouts. About their front pages, you can look at this area right here and be like, oh, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
For this content area, they're showing the grid columns, the layout columns. And you can see that this is a button that spans 2 columns, and it sits on each column, or is actually fixed to 2 columns for each button. So they span 2 columns and they're fixed. So this one starts at column 0. This one would be shifted over to column 3. This would be shifted over to column 3, 4, 5. But what that's a Bourbon and Neat does, you just tell it to shift columns or to span columns, and it converts it over into the appropriate margins and all of that stuff for you.
Okay.
Did you have the aha moment yet?
Yeah. I see it.
So tell me why this header here is great for the column layout, but this one isn't here.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's. That one is like right on the column. Well, yeah,
exactly.
Mostly.
Yeah. But see how you saw that little bit off?
Mm-hmm.
Once you really get going with Sketch, you wouldn't even have that little bit off, because at least you can work with that little bit off, because I mean it's responsive.
Yeah. You can just move it kind of, yeah.
So what and then also lastly, if you notice here, so this is more of a Photoshop convention where they would have, so you see this is an image right here, right? The whole image area right there. And this white area is what I'm trying to get here. But it's like when I move it, it's really, if you look over here out on the edges, how big is this thing? Oh, it's the whole white background on the entire site.
Yeah.
Right, because it ends right here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating. So from design, you see how this is the footer?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to take this and see how it's named footer as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's freaking awesome. But now with the white, number one, technically this guy should really come up to here, because then that does things like tells me
it tells you again. Oh, okay.
That thing tells me how far away it is from like the bottom. Or,
right.
I mean, I know you're totally getting this. I'm just going through some examples here. But now the awkward thing though is that it goes behind the image and up into this. But me looking at it top down, now I know where it is. I wanted to call this thing, you see where it says background is white?
Yeah.
It really should be header if it only stopped right here. And then I could actually, that header should be a group that has a nav in it and a logo in it and this area in it as well. But since it actually spans the entire page, I can't quite do things like say, well, how far is this from there? And how far is that from there? And how actual high is this container right here? So now I'm doing things like drawing squares just so I can measure what the height is of these things.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
And this is all okay. Now, keep in mind, at least I've done this dozens of times. Like this is old hat to me, but it is something that if I have the opportunity to pass along to designers, people who are doing front end, people who are doing content, Sketch is the source of truth. So it's got to be treated that way.
Right.
Because the
more of that you do from this side, then the quicker the front end development goes.
Absolutely. And really, it's not a bad thing for the designer or anything like that. It's empowering to the designer. Imagine if
you could because then you're specifying so much more. When you take a design from Photoshop and it gets sliced and turned into a website, half the time all the spacing is super off and you have to do so many iterations of just I mean, obviously, the better the front end designer, the less that happens. But
precisely.
But oftentimes, you don't have as much control, and it can I think it can be really frustrating, especially from the designer's perspective, because other people don't notice it as much. So it seems like it could be a beneficial thing.
So with Photoshop before, it's this would be okay, where it's it doesn't matter how wide that thing is and how short that thing is. Who cares, right? Somebody will figure it out. But really, that would be the designer punting off to the front end person who typically isn't that good at design.
Yeah, they're not necessarily going to pay attention to the spacing that much.
Exactly, and really, it's because, and that's what designers are calloused about. They're not used to front end people caring. Now we're at a day and age where people who write a little more code and do some front end stuff are caring about the design, which I think is a real awesome sweet spot and a great time to be working on things. So now that's how Sketch gets birthed, because of inspirations like that. You got people like myself who are writing code that really care about design now, to the point where they're going to the designer and just oh, this is throwing off the grid.
Yeah.
Which is a little different than maybe the past 5 to 10 years of how things have gone, but this is definitely a new day. And that's, my feedback there, because it's otherwise we have been back and forth, a lot of back and forth, actually.
Right.
Lastly with the sketch, and this probably went about 20 minutes longer than I thought, but this is really good. I'll actually show you it live here. I'll change this up here. And instead of that being that, I'm going to go to, let's see here. I'll go to View, Canvas, Show, Layout Settings. You want to see, wait, why does it say 16? What about this one? Oh, don't tell. No wonder. Canvas. This is kind of weird. Oh, no way. This is not what's going on here. 3, I bet. It is. It is.
What happened?
Okay, so typically, whenever there's a grid layout, there's a little bit on the left and a little bit on the right, which typically is split. And this is something like Bourbon, the guys that wrote Bourbon and Neat, they've spent 5 years trying to figure out with some of the best front-end designers how to do a grid layout. But what do you do when you get to the edges of the page? Do you have it stick to this edge, or do you respect the fact that there's a gutter? So what Bourbon and Neat do is they do the same thing Sketch does, and takes the average gutter spacing, splits it in half, and puts it on either side of the artboard.
Okay.
Now you can control if that's on or off, but typically it's uniform amongst all of your responsive designs.
Right.
So what's happened here, my friend, is this is actually a mobile site or artboard that I was like, wait, why does it say 16? It makes no sense.
Right.
It actually has, if I go to layout settings, it actually has 16 columns. But since it's only 320 wide, it's cutting off the column. You can clearly see that column's not as wide as that one is right here.
Right, right.
And this one actually has a margin on the left, and that one doesn't have a margin on the right.
Uh-huh.
So now if this was a desktop design, I'd say the whole entire desktop would have to be redesigned because that just doesn't work in CSS, right? But since it's mobile, this is one of my trick sillies here. I'm gonna go to layout settings. How about one? What about that? How about what if you had one? And how about the value of one is too small. What? Okay. How about this? How about none? What about none? Does that work? Nope. Discard change. Okay. And there's that gutter on the outside thing. So then that's the thing that would have been clicked if that's the desired effect. But instead of this, we're going to say, how about none? And here, my friend, is where the doing mobile first, this is how you win. Tell me where you
It's all centered anyway.
At least
it's just one column and it's all centered, so it doesn't really matter.
So smart. And also, where's our thing here? I was looking at this, and Lizzie looked at that. She was like, "Well, there's something."
Yeah, I mean, maybe we should even look at the later design now, because I wonder if some of this has been. I mean, well, definitely that's probably been cleaned up, but I wonder if.
But the really cool thing about this, I will say,
spacing and stuff has. I don't know.
The beautiful part about doing mobile first, at least, is what do you think the benefits are? I'm going to let you speak on that one, just from what you're looking at. Say like doing mobile, then going to here to tablet, which is next, as opposed to starting with desktop. What do you think is best about that right there?
It looks like the styling is a lot simpler too. So you basically kind of are making it more and more complicated as you go on. So you do like the markup, and then you do like the styling for the mobile, which is really simple. And then you just have to like add to create the tablet version. And then you just have to add to create the desktop version, I'm guessing, versus like making the desktop version and then having to do something like completely different sort of for the tablet, and then having to do something completely different for the mobile.
You get a gold star for that one. Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And then you get to do things like, and this is something that I've actually been working on, that I have been working on. Remember I said I was working, or let me get this straight. You've heard of CSS, but have you heard of CSSP?
No.
So CSS-P stands for positioning. What that really means is that in CSS, you can control fonts, colors, all of that stuff, right? But then there's also a subset of rules that allow you to do things like control sizing, positioning, floating, you know, all of that good stuff. Margins, padding. Well, I wouldn't say margins and paddings, because that also, I don't think that has anything to do with layout.
Right.
I think that has to do with content spacing, like line height, right? When you do mobile first, it allows you to do things like, let me go up to our cool Sensible marketing site. And I've taken the liberty to install Bourbon and Neat, which I have been using. And I'm going to go here into the base and tell me going by this naming convention, you know, we call a thing a thing. What does it look like? How does it look like we're separating? How does it look like we're separating out the styles? And I'll give you a hint. The underscore means it's a partial.
What do you mean by partial?
Partial meaning that you can take it and put it into other style sheets. So typically you'll have something a little more lightweight that you can do things like, let's see here. I'll look at my block slogan, assets, style sheets. Then you can do things like this.
Oh, okay.
And without you even knowing SAS, you definitely know what's going on here. As far as it would say, be like, for this, replace that line with whatever the contents are on line 3, and rinse and repeat for every single one of them. So it allows you to modularly organize what you have.
Okay.
What we have, rather.
Well, it makes it easier to like read and write.
Absolutely, you're absolutely correct. And so for our Sensible marketing, I've done all of that already, which is really cool. But if you can look at these partials now, what do you notice about how we're sort of partitioning out the styles?
Yeah, so I mean, it's based on kind of like kind of types of content, kind of, not like pages.
Nice. I like how you think. What we're really doing is we're grouping like concerns.
Okay, yeah.
So for instance, typography. Remember when I was asking you for the fonts and all of that stuff?
Mm-hmm.
That's because when we get to here, we have to actually embed the fonts into the site, because just because it looks good on our machine doesn't mean it looks good on everyone else's machine.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I actually like to do before I start working on a sketch file and doing this phase is I'll remove all non-default fonts off of my machine. A designer would be like, I want to, no way. I'd rather shoot myself in the head to do something like that, right? But with myself, I do that because when I'm doing the CSS, I've been in presentations where, oh yeah, look at this presentation, it's so awesome. And then someone goes home and looks at it on their machine and they're like, man, your fonts look whack.
Uh-huh.
And it's because they weren't embedded into the site. So that's one of the things I'm actually going to be doing now that we have the fonts. I'm going to do that probably right after we get off the horn here. But if you look also, it allows us to set up variables here where it's like, so notice it's active and there's Museo. This is another site again. But Open Sans seems to be that. But, oh, look at that on line 10. You remember with the variables from SAS, it seems like we're setting up a base font family with a font stack here. And a header font family, too. Seems like we're setting up font sizes as well in the variables, line heights throughout the entire site, board colors as well. So like in Sensible, we have like a Sensible teal, I think I called that.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it changes by a shade, or Nina says it's just, this 9 should be an 8.
Right.
We change it right there, and whatever's using light gray will be updated. Down to the background color, which is dark blue. Just throwing that out there. It's not white. It's dark blue. Blue gray. And so you kind of get this variables partial, right? So we've done all of that. And what that allows us to do is to get at least the page to be like this. So that's the CSS part. The P starts coming into play when we get over to the tablet, because now we're shifting things around.
Right.
That's when the grid comes in handy.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And we kind of could get away with it if we just actually gave a margin on either side. But when you get around, when you start doing that, it's better to just go into the grid layout, which is here. So to start off with the mobile, you get the content in. But the thing about separating content from presentation is that the presentation should stay the same no matter what. So the real question is, why are we doing this, putting this here? You see how we have the youremail.com, consider me, and all of that? That means I like it here, but that tells me that it's gone on the tablet.
Well, it's not, yeah. Like this is the, if you scroll down to the next page, this page is is like the older version, right? This isn't the, I think you might have changed the wrong one to Neo back.
That's not true, because it's this one right here, homegirl.
Okay, I think this is just because it's the old version. The homepage is a little bit different.
Got it. So that's, but see, now it's old. It's old, you say, but I mean, it's what I got. It's what.
Yeah. No, it's what. Yeah. That's
for sure.
Not your, yeah.
Awesome. So then that's cool. That's why we're even having this talk here. So that's awesome. We want, but no matter what, here's the learnings. We don't want to do something like this though. So it's like, all right,
no,
that's a CTA, right?
Yeah.
It should, if it's a CTA, think how we section things off, right? If it's a CTA in this section, it should always stay in that section in the tablet and the desktop. Like it shouldn't jump up to here.
Yeah. Right.
But besides that, the cool part is there's we're not looking at to see what's right and what's wrong in here clearly, but this we're looking at why mobile will give us our biggest bang for our buck first.
Mm-hmm.
Now, many people would be like, "Oh, that kind of sucks." I don't really care about the mobile. I want it on the desktop so I can show people on computers. And it's just like in this phase, this is one of the areas where it's like it doesn't matter what we want. It's if we want a mobile site, we better start there.
Yeah.
Or else it's going to be a lot of pain in the future. That is one can we do not want to kick down the road. I did it before, and it halted a project for like a week versus getting the mobile site up within a day.
Okay.
Because you have to rewrite everything. You have to take you have to push Humpty Dumpty across the ledge, the desktop site, and then you have to put Humpty Dumpty back together again.
Right.
So I've talked a lot, and I feel like I'm rambling a little now. What are your thoughts from all of this? Like, this is all I need to get as far as what I've seen from Sketch. And I know this isn't the right Sketch file, but I'd be willing to bet that the similar conventions are brought over or are not being implemented in the other Sketch file. And we want
especially if this is on multiple pages. So I think it's really from this Sketch file to the other one.
Yeah.
The home page, I think, is where the most changes have been, and I think the other pages are probably the same. So if these kind of things haven't been applied on, like the Is This For Me and Why Sensible and all of that pages, then I would bet that yes. Similarly,
so let's so the header is definitely not under to consider me is not lined up. Everything, but see, look, everything else is fairly beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So this right here, so see, look, perfect example. Like, see this logo here?
Centered, yeah.
This would be great, but really, if it doesn't snap to that, then this needs to be a background image that sits centered and is 67 pixels pushed down from the top of the page.
Yeah.
And a background image. It would have to be a background image because it can't really sit onto a column.
Okay.
Does that sort of make sense?
That makes sense.
I'm just giving tons, and I keep saying it doesn't make sense, but there's all little. It's really like
a bunch of.
It's really like a strategy of different, like it's a bunch of different strategies that you kind of like have to go through it and say, oh, okay, well, if I'm abiding by the grid, it would make sense for this thing to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this is all centered, so that's awesome, and that's centered, and that's awesome. This is hairy.
Right.
This is hairy.
So what do you do when it's like something like that where it's two columns? I guess you'd want to have them snap to like the appropriate.
So at least this is why I say that, believe it or not, you might not think you are capable, but I am definitely team Elise, because say if you, it doesn't mean you have to do it or you should do it. You can do it, because all Elise would do is take that right there and say,
yeah,
done. Wait, there's one more. Oh, and it looks like it goes right up to the edge of this one, so I can actually say that it's a span 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Span 6 columns.
And then
but that better mean that these are 6 columns in width as well.
Yeah, not quite, but we probably have to
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But it is 6. And I'll tell you why. Because we're snapping to a left column.
Right.
No, left. You see what I did there?
Yeah.
No, I guess not. So that this treatment we just did right there makes this perfect for laying out with for CSS. And all we did was shift a couple of things around, right?
Right.
But this, we would not move this over to that because there's nothing around it.
Right.
So, oops. Okay, there's nothing around it. So we can assume that this thing's centered, and I can just kind of tell by looking at the things around it. Oh, but now this right here, this HR had to be tightened up just to the edge of that right there. Because then I can say shift 2, span with 16 minus 4, span 12. So let's see here. Why And like you can already, so the rest will be easy to go through. You can already see how these can be treated a little better.
Yeah.
Because if there's something next to it, I think I just learned that from this talk. If there's something next to it, that means that it should probably use the grid. And this, so already look at this right here. If I were to grab this, I'm giving the designer's giving the intent that this is 6 columns in width.
Right, and it's just centered there. That's good.
To whereas I guess this, it really should snap here, but we can say that it's got a width of maybe 4, but it doesn't really need 4. It needs 3, and so I know that can be touched up a little better for sure. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess there is a homegirl Elise. Nice. And so that's why sensible. So there is an issue within that one. Let's check this one here. Perfect.
Nice.
Perfect.
Okay, I'm gonna bet then that probably the newest file that I just sent you, that the homepage might be a little bit better because
no bueno here. You see that?
Yeah.
Okay. And so like with this like these typically are grouped, grouped because then you can actually see where the intended edges is supposed to be, and maybe this thing really is 4 wide, and the group would represent that. But as I'm looking at right now,
that kind of makes sense looking at the way that they're, because they're probably supposed to be kind of centered along.
Right. So really, this way. So I'm pressing Shift, and I'm pressing Shift, Control G. Oh, okay. Let's see. This is why we should probably group things. So let's say I take this whole thing right here.
Just move it.
Now it works.
Okay.
See, I just grouped them, shifted that over just a little bit right there. One more. That gives me the intent right there.
Yeah.
You like that?
Cool.
Because then I can just split this down into an image, text, have this be centered, have that be as wide as the entire 4, but have the text centered, rinse and repeat it onto the next ones.
Cool.
And I'll go to the cost. We only got 2 more pages here, at least, and we're done. Philip and I are going to work on this today.
Okay, sweet.
We have been working on that, clearly. This is all, look at this, all centered, all centered. Cool.
Yeah.
Done. Awesome. Why the mobile's in the center over here, and this is whited out, but this is the old file. I'm taking it as that.
Yeah.
And then the question.
I think when you look at the new one, it'll be, yeah.
Questions are Control L, and so we might want to write down Control L as a shortcut for turning on the grid after you click on the artboard title at the top. So it seems like most of them do need some touching from this file. Can we open up your file, and now that I've kind of showed you, can you go through that file, please?
Yes.
And thanks for your time too in doing all this too, because this is going to be beneficial not just for you and I, but our future selves, and Lizzie and Nina, if they want to sit down and really could be a situation of, hey, look, if you had an hour of your life to sit down and watch something about how we'll communicate with the assets, like here's the video.
Definitely.
As opposed to days or something like that crazy going by with discommunication. Not that we have that. But if this is where we kind of plant the stake in the ground, because it could get a lot worse.
Can I borrow your
charger?
Charger? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure. How much juice you got? I talked out your battery.
I know. I got only 4% now.
Yeah, you got it. I'm going to leave the charger in here, and we're going to switch rooms. How about that?
Okay.
Just don't make fun of how janky my charger is.
Okay, I'll try.
All right. Oh, no. Why, thank you.
Thanks.
We're literally, I'll leave it in there. We're literally switching rooms.
You lost your Sharpie.
Uh-oh. the girl outside is probably looking like, what just happened? Just both like on a conference call.
Thank you.
You're absolutely charger. You good to go?
Oh no. I don't know if it's gonna. Oh no. Okay, cool. It's working. Never mind. Just the light wasn't coming on, but so I was not sure. Okay.
You talking smack about my charger?
No, not on purpose.
Oh,
I don't know if that makes it worse.
Oh, it's too funny. Okay, so why don't you go ahead on yours and we'll go from here. Let's start from
like an in between the 50 and the 25. Oh well.
Now, by the way, Elise, what we just went over just now, that was, I'm so happy we got to do that because that was me getting all of the knowledge that I've had as far as like using Sketch that I've gotten in the past 2 years. And it's also like the sweet spot between the developer, because I'm a developer, but I'm just going to pat myself on the back. I'm probably one of the best CSS people you'll ever meet in your life. And I'm finding the sweet spot in how to use, like how Sketch is a very valuable tool. And it took me months. I mean, months. Like my buddy, when I first got introduced to it, he was like, you're using Photoshop and Fireworks to lay out websites? He was like, man, listen, I keep telling, he's like, I'm not going to force you to do it, but Sketch is going to come across your life and you're going to think it's Jesus himself.
Yeah, no, this is awesome.
It took me months to figure this stuff out, and I'm pretty gnarly when it comes to Photoshop, but you just got that information in about an hour.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's why learning from somebody is so much faster and better.
So much faster and better. So now, why don't you go through the different pages? Why don't at least go through the different pages and let her, or actually what we'll do is we'll say, what did we learn? As far as myself, I learned that I learned empathy because Nina did a great job with this site. Could there be improvements in regards to getting them over to CSS? Absolutely. Did she even know about them or even the conventions? You don't know what you don't know until you really go through it, and especially have someone else show you. I've seen designers and developers get in a pretty much damn near verbal wars about what we've just gone over right here. But we have to understand that no one's attacking anyone else as far as what they're doing. Everyone's doing a great job. It's just really that everything's pixel perfect in the digital world within the program, but have to respect the fact that it's not on the browser.
Right.
And once we can, as long as we have some conventions that we all abide by, like this, it actually makes it dead bloody simple. So the first one I would do is I'd start from mobile first for each one. And I take the grid settings off of the mobile, and you'll do that by clicking on the artboard and doing Control-L. And actually, you can go up to the settings and you can disable grid. It's like up in View. Should be View, Canvas, and then Layout settings all the way at the bottom. And uncheck columns. Okay. Voila. So now you should see that much better because it really is one column.
Right. Well, I guess there's these.
Well, there's
the footer.
Those are nothing more than elements that are left justified instead of centered.
Okay, cool. And then the hamburger, but I guess that's just right, justified. Cool. Okay, so yeah, I mean, it looks like there's a little bit of like cleaning up that could be done with like snapping some of these things to the grid. I think this image probably needs to be edited so that we have the right. You probably need like the exact, this image, right?
Do remember, the closer it gets to the edge, so the closer it gets to the edge, the more pixel perfect it has to be, number one.
Right.
And number two, I don't need the exact image because Sketch has cropping and things like that.
Oh, okay. It does it already.
It has basic Photoshop tricks. So if you go up to Insert at the top left, the very top left of Sketch, you go to Insert.
Yeah.
That's what I love about Sketch. The difference between Sketch and Photoshop. No, click the Insert button on the top left. Underneath that. That's all you can do with Sketch.
Okay.
And when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this is a child's toy. Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. That's all you need to do in Sketch, really. And if you have to, because what I learned about understanding this menu was Photoshop is great for editing photos. Nobody ever said it was great for creating web pages.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Looks pretty good though, besides that.
Yeah.
So awesome. Let's go to the next page before we find something else.
So, well, actually, just one more question. So the tablet, it looks like these don't have the gutters on the sides, and
yeah,
do you think that that's because of the? Oh my gosh, what am I having?
Canvas.
Yeah, so that's 16 too.
So what we really should do is that if it's 9, we should make it 9, give it gutters, and if it's looking like it doesn't want to fit, then we adjust the gutters until it does fit, or adjust the width until it does fit. But you don't want to really adjust both at the same time.
Yeah.
Because at the break point is where it happens.
Okay.
The way the CSS works is you actually pass in a number of columns. That's where you actually Bourbon works. You pass in a number of columns and your gutter size that you want it to be at your breakpoint.
Okay.
And the numbers should always go upward. So if it was 2, it should be 5. Or if it was 2, it should go to 9 and then to 12.
Mm-hmm.
And now again, now you see why I said you would have to put Humpty Dumpty back together again after you break them if you were to do it from a desktop, then try to go to mobile.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Control L's and then is there you go, you got it.
So yeah, just the same thing.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and click and drag and select those and scoot them over. You can what I usually do is select them all and just use my arrow key until it looks
Yeah, that's what I tried to do and it just unselects them.
Wait a minute. Wait, stop. Do Control G. Oh, no, Control G again. That was a great Command G. There.
Okay, cool.
See, because it's too many things that are being selected at once. That's why it's like once you really get them like this, you want to group them after you create them.
It's the arrow keys are not letting me move.
Really? Then try to control or something should let you snap to a column, which is what I love. Oh, see, it's weird. Yeah, that's kind of awkward.
I don't know what's going on.
I think you just got because it's too close to the other one over to the side. Like it's trying to link up with two things on the right. You might want to group the things on the right. It'll make it easier for you to move them.
And then I move those. There we go. And then if I move these, no, this one really doesn't.
Zoom in. Control plus. Command plus. Command plus. There you go.
Oh, okay.
Voila.
Interesting.
Whenever you're moving and shifting things, I always hold the option or whatever when I'm trying to figure out. So let's maybe click on one of those groupings. Mm-hmm. And then hold option and then just highlight over the header above. So immediately right there as a front-end developer, they're like, oh, yep, that's right. Margin bottom or margin top on these things. I'd probably do a margin bottom of the header, and that lays out that thing.
How do you ungroup?
Control Shift G, I would say.
Okay.
Or Command Shift G, not Control. Command Shift G.
Nope. Okay.
Good old context menu. Hey, so at least look at you. You're getting nasty in Sketch. You do realize that you have every bit of information in your brain right now from how comfortable I see what you're doing here to do everything we need from this. You know that, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Not to say you should. I'm just saying. I'm just saying you got the power.
Sweet. Oh, and yeah, here you can see kind of how that works now. What the call to action we were talking about before is on the mobile, it goes to year, and on tablet, it's here, and then on.
Oh, dude, this is totally
makes more sense, right?
Totally different.
Okay, good.
So do me a favor now. I'm going to show you how much power you really have. Scroll up to the top where it's the titles of the artboards.
Yes.
Take that mobile and put it over first, please.
I can just like that.
I wouldn't put it on top of the thing. Yeah.
Oh, I can move it over.
Yeah,
I just thought that was an edge for some reason. Like,
it is an edge. You were just on top of it. That's all. So you see how it's kind of like matching up and such. Now, how much better is that?
Yes, much better.
But see, now you're going to have to update and save and email the copy out to everyone and Slack it because now this one's changed.
Yeah.
Maybe we can say V4.1A.
Well, I think that it's possible that Nina has made some changes since this one actually, so I'm gonna make sure.
Yeah, we gotta fix
her and not do any more on this right now, but.
Yeah, we gotta fix that. But
that was just good for me to mess around with it and see.
Absolutely. So then let's see here. Let's throw on the grid on that.
Yeah. Cool. Okay.
Awesome. So the first thing, you're getting used to it.
So I mean, a lot of it is, so you can tell.
It's beautiful. Nina did a fantastic job.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And that's, hopefully she watches it till this far, but that's really the thing that we're coming over here. It's not that no one did anything wrong at all. It's really just how we can better develop and communicate websites than the bad old days.
Yeah, definitely. This is awesome.
Especially with the tools and with a tool like Sketch. I mean, come on. It's like paint. It's like paint by numbers at least.
Yeah.
Okay, so this looks great. What about the tablet? What about the tablet columns?
Oh, I'm guessing that there's the same. I mean, maybe not, but
yeah, all our tablets we gotta fix. Let's just throw that out there.
Well, and then then we need to figure out what we want the width of the homepage to actually be, or the desktop version, and.
Correct. Well, what is it right now?
Well. They're all.
Are they still 1450? Please tell me they're not.
My guess is that
they're 1450. 60. 50? Is that 50 or 60?
1450. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's going to be painful. So that needs to be fixed in each one. That's something I wouldn't recommend that you do.
No. Yeah.
And that's something that we can kind of get away with because there's a lot of margin we got on either side, so we can easily give up 50 pixels without killing too much of the main content.
Yeah, that I think it would probably just be better to do it like fully change the width on this. And I mean we probably need to move it down maybe to 1366 anyway.
Right. So that's the first task.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you're really having your laundry list, that's the first task.
Mm-hmm.
The second task is to get tablet to use the right column number and gutters on either side.
Right.
Like if we're gonna we can't remove the gutters from one resolution and add it to the others. That makes things really awkward. And it's you'd think it would be simple, but that apparently is the one hairy area in all browsers to try to make work properly is the gutters, on the outside gutters, because
there's probably really like conventions around the gutter width, right, for tablet or something.
Well, it's not gutter width for tablet because the gutter is the gutter. It's only one number. And the convention is to split the gutter in half, because they even use like the golden number to actually get these things to show up.
Yeah.
So by like removing it, starts making all of them start doing weird things, especially when you're resizing and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And for the mobile, to totally remove the grids, just so there's no confusion, which just basically means just uncheck the grid columns or the columns.
Okay.
You see this?
And then to go through and make sure everything that isn't centered or right or left aligned is snapped to the grid.
Voila! Those conventions you said right there that's you don't have to create in Sketch, but that when you're reading Sketch files, Sketch then can be the source of truth for you that you can go over and then hand off to somebody who would be implementing the front end.
Yeah.
See how like the Sensible logo and such at the top is kind of I can buy it being centered.
Yeah, I think it probably is supposed to be centered.
But it still makes sense to give those things widths. And typically when you give something like that a width, it would want to be a width of some column size. And if that's the case, then if it's 3, what's 16 minus 3? That's 13. Mm-hmm. So it can't be 16 columns wide. It has to be 4. Because then at least if it's 4, then that way it can have 6 and 6 on either side.
Yeah.
It all depends. It all depends on if the image has to be exactly the size, or how the whole thing lays out. Mm-hmm. 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other, pretty much. So that's not. We don't have to be pedantic about that. That looks like we can get away with the centering.
Okay.
But then we should make the tablet as well, because it kind of gives me the intention that there's 3 and it's shifted 3, but it's not really shifted 3 because they're not really columns.
Right. Yeah, we'll have to figure it out on the tablet. Okay.
And that's it. And if we can't group things now about this, I don't want people to think that we're like redoing the entire site all over again, even though we kind of are. This isn't just an iteration, another one that we can get this iteration knocked out fairly quickly. I mean, it's really as simple as I'm not blocked from the mobile, but I am blocked from the desktop.
Right.
Lizzie's not blocked from the mobile either. She's definitely blocked a little from the desktop.
Mm-hmm.
The tablet, I would say, as long as we have the mobile or the smallest resolution first and the largest resolution, we can sit the tablet in there in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
But we got to have the smallest and then the largest.
Okay.
And that's all I got. That's all. As like my goal of this was to get as much information as I could about like sketching the whole process and getting it up to the site. Hopefully, it wasn't too much drinking from the fire hose.
No, that was really helpful.
So what did you learn this round? Like, what? I know there's a lot of things, but maybe not even technology related. What did you learn?
Actually, I was gonna say that I learned like really why everybody wants to use Sketch. Like, I didn't really know. I knew it was better for CSS, but I didn't really know like the full specifics. But now I like really understand why it's so useful, and it seems like it actually gives the designer a lot more control. It really fits in with how the responsive web is now.
And it's funny because you got to be careful what you ask for. Designers have been crying about that for so long.
Yeah.
And now they got the power, but they have to be so meticulous.
Yeah.
With those sketch files, but isn't that what a designer does?
Yes.
And the best thing you can do is to help is grouping and naming things. That's the key.
Okay.
People who have played with Sketch for a while, even really people who are really good at Sketch, I never expect to see things grouped and named properly. But typically that means that the designer is not working in tandem with the content person, which is not working in tandem with the UX person, which is kind of the situation we have here.
Yeah.
Then we have to kind of be overly.
Everybody's a little bit like remote, sort of. Yeah.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Because as a CS, somebody who's implementing the front end, the only thing we care about from the sketch is just saying, okay, I'm in here. What's the red number tell me? How far is that thing away from that thing? Done. How far is that thing away from that thing? Done. If we have to start trying to do math ourselves, it feels like Photoshop again.
Yeah, definitely.
That's all I got, though.
Okay.
Thanks so much for that extra long Pomodoro. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well needed. Thank you. That was really informative and helpful.
Right. And I think, do we have everything that we need to pass on to the next stage? Just so you know, I'm shifting and going, or Lizzie and I are shifting and going right to the mobile, and awesome. Can possibly have something to show you before the day's up, at least for the first page, which is, you see how fast it is to like go with mobile? That's the best part about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we have everything. I think you guys, I sent you this file, so hopefully you guys can start working from this file now, and I'll just double check with Nina that there's not a newer one. And then, yeah, and then I'll talk to Nina about kind of like adjusting the desktop a little bit.
Yeah, seeing how painful it is, and just letting her know that any help that any of us need, that I have great sketch skills as far as like laying things out and how to push, what sort of concerns to have, and Lizzie does as well. So it's, this is more of us collaborating concern than can it get done, because this really, I feel like she's able to shift things around before the day's up if she had time today to look at it. Yeah,
so if she doesn't have time, then you guys could also do it, right?
Absolutely. And so the intent is is that if we get through, we'll punt off on a desktop to get an iteration of the mobile in. I think that will be great justice for us to do that first. Our future selves will kiss us for it, I promise you. And then in that time, or whatever it is, to allow Nina to come up with a new v4.c.
Yeah.
And that it should probably say 011116. That would help my brain at least a lot.
Yeah.
Then we can go immediately over to the desktop.
Okay. Sounds good.
Sound like a plan? Do we have a strategy?
Yes. Yes, we do.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Oh, I mean, I guess the one final thing is, do we want to then like move forward with making the desktop 1366 wide?
Elise, that's the first thing we should do. If there's anything that we need to do, that is the first thing.
No. I just mean, are we down? Is 1366 good? We don't think it needs to be 1280. That was my question between the two of those. Not should we adjust it? But
honestly speaking, I'd want it 13, whatever that number was. I typically shy on the side of having a little smaller.
Okay.
Say if it's like 1300, but then I would say, why isn't it 1280 then?
Oh yeah, I mean, it should be at least one of the 1300 would be weird because I don't think it would like look right for anybody.
Is it? Wait, is 1280 divisible by 12?
Yeah. No.
So say 1280. I don't know where I got the number 1280 from, but I do know where I got it from. I'm gonna have to talk to the guys and see what they think. I would say 1280 or something that's fairly divisible by 12.
Okay.
That's the moral of that story, but definitely not larger than 1360.
Okay.
Definitely not.
Yeah, I mean, I think that from what I've seen, I would either make it 1280 or 1366. Because those are the two. I mean, I think 1366 is the most common, and then 1280 I think is just the like next kind of lowest like step in terms of resolution. So
well, then there's a thing, then there's also the thing here that says, we have to be careful. This is very, very touchy subject because we're also technically supposed to be designing for the content looking crappy, not necessarily
right.
But what we're really designing for is not breakpoints. We're talking about the max width.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because the breakpoint to make it the desktop version could still be 1280, right? And then it would just like expand.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So the breakpoint can be whatever is the breakpoint needs to be whatever whenever desktop starts or tablet starts looking crappy.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the breakpoints come in.
And then it would just kind of squish, and then the responsive design would just kind of squish stuff together, right?
Exactly. That's how it works.
So
it's not squish stuff together because that's thinking from desktop to mobile.
So we should probably make it for 1280, and then it could kind of like, I guess what I'm thinking about is like if we design, which way makes more sense? You design this for 1366, and then if your screen is smaller, it like gets more compact. Essentially, yes. Like would this get smaller, or would it be better to design for 1280 and then this would like stretch a little bit if your screen was bigger? Like which is the way that it would actually?
The latter of the two.
Work the latter. Okay, so we should design for 1280.
Right, but we always should have a max width though.
Okay, and then the max width is
1360 or whatever it is, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Right. Okay. So then, is that the width that this should be?
Yep.
Okay, and then the breakpoint is just 1280.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. That sounds good.
And I think the smallest one. How wide is the mobile?
Well, I'm guessing that we'll just use the 320 and 760.
Well, I just was curious to see what it is there.
Oh, yeah. 323. So, okay, so we need to adjust those a little bit.
It's got to be not 321, not 322.
It's got to be 320 and 760, not.
Yeah. At least for the min width. Doesn't have to be even, it could be 763 because remember that's just the breakpoint. Breakpoints are when your content when your content starts looking shitty, that's where you put a breakpoint. It has nothing to do with the actual device.
Oh.
Min width and the max width are just the minimum your size will serve up. Well, like it's not going to go smaller than that. It's not going to go larger than that. That has to do a little.
For the mobile, what should the width? Should the width of this be the min width?
320 is fair.
Okay, cool. And then for the tablet.
Here's why, my friend. You got to think smallest and going highest. Because that 323, it's not even going to kick in on an iPhone because it's 323, not 320.
Right. I guess my question though is like, what is this size? Is that the max width or the min width?
That's the min width. Oh, I guess so. It would kick in for 323. But if that's the min width, we want to make that the min width. I mean, we don't have to really change it because it's not killing any kittens from going from min to
up. Especially for that one, I guess, because it's just one column and you're just going to. But,
right. But we have to be cautious of like the desktop because if it went over 3 pixels on the desktop, then we would be hosed.
Right. And for the tablet, should it be 760?
That should be whenever the content starts looking shitty from mobile.
Right. That's when the breakpoint is. But how should it be designed on here? What should be the width?
That's a great question. 760 is fair. Let's just say
okay.
That's a fair guesstimate. Just because that's what an iPad is, but just we have to be realistic that we're leaning towards Apple.
Right. Well, okay. I mean, so then similarly to the other thing, would it be better to design for bigger and have the breakpoint be smaller if other screens are bigger? Is that, I guess I'm confused about like about how the responsive design between the breakpoint and like the full width. The max width we want to be like, would the max width for the tablet, would we want that to be like even bigger then? Because
well, then as long as
the min width is kind of the breakpoint, right?
Well, typically the max width is the min width of the next one.
Of the what?
The max width is the min width of the next breakpoint.
Right. So I mean that would be 1280.
Precisely.
Right?
Precisely.
So is that what we should design for on the tablet?
That's a great question. It doesn't really matter because then if you have the min width be 1280 and then the tablet be 1280, we don't want to design for the edge cases. We want it to snap at a new one when it gets a tablet, and then if it gets a little larger, it's not going to look too shady until it gets to 1280. Because really, how do we even know that the minimum width is 1280?
But I get okay. So, but like, if we design for 760 on the tablet, does that mean that like, if your screen is at like 10 something, all the text will be like jammed in the middle and not grow?
Well, it's supposed to look great from the breakpoint as far as you can scale it out.
Right. So if like what is the way that we have to set that up essentially from this? I guess it's just how you guys do the code. It doesn't matter on here.
Well, I'll give you the convention that I use that I've worked 99.99% of the time. Mm-hmm. This seems to be 9 columns on a tablet, right?
Yeah.
And it's 16 columns on a desktop, right?
Mm-hmm.
Say the breakpoint for min width is at 760 for the tablet.
Mm-hmm.
The min width for the desktop is at 1280. What it's going to do is as it grows, it's going to try to stretch out all of the columns.
Okay, so it can stretch or shrink them, and it doesn't really matter. It'll all be fine.
That's
So it doesn't really matter what the width. Okay, I mean it kind of matters what the width is, but it's not like.
Yeah, you're right. That, my friend, right there, that is where Bourbon and Neat come into play. That's where they're so awesome.
Yeah, so that's just what I was confused about is like, did we want to, is when we were talking about about what the width of the desktop was going to be, like,
yeah,
I guess.
These are only breakpoints, min widths, and max widths, period.
Right. I mean, so if we design this for 1366, like, it'll just shrink when it's 1280, right?
Yep.
It won't like, yeah. Okay, cool. Sweet.
But it's not going to get larger than 1366.
Right. Well, that's my concern then with the tablet is like if we make it 760, then it won't get larger than 760.
No, it's going to get larger. That's
okay. So that's just, so it's really only matters like the mobile and the desktop widths are the only ones that are like actual barrier points, and then the tablet one's kind of like floating.
Right. And you want to really speak responsive. You want to say the min and the max and break.
Right. So there's only one min and max. There's not like.
Nope. There's only one min and max.
For a min and max. Okay. Yes. That explains it. I was just a little bit confused there.
It's a little, the rabbit hole goes a little deeper. There are min and max are what control the breakpoints, but each media breakpoint can have a minimum and a maximum set to it, but each layout or this responsive design, you can have an explicit minimum and an explicit maximum.
Okay.
But those can be within a particular breakpoint that has a minimum and a maximum as well. So the mobile has no breakpoints, right? It just has a minimum size. And then all of a sudden when it hits, say, 7 something, then boom, it switches over to the tablet design, right? That tablet design's breakpoint has a minimum of 760 and a maximum of the minimum of the next breakpoint.
Okay. Cool.
Repeat that for me so I know you grokked it.
Yeah, so the tablet has a minimum of the breakpoint from mobile to tablet, and the max is the breakpoint from tablet to desktop.
Boom. Bingo.
Okay. Cool.
And then, of course, the largest one, the desktop, just has an overall max width.
Yeah, and then whatever we design tablet for, it'll just stretch or shrink. It's not going
to
change anything.
Precisely. Or anyone in between. Some people have like 8 different responsive designs because they just, have to pay.
Well, so then actually, in terms of the desktop, then what is the harm of making the max width 1440?
There is no harm in making the max width, but it's just that the intent of the design should be 1440 as well. If it shrinks down a little bit, you do have a point there for sure. It's just the majority of the displays are not going to be 1440, I believe. And if that's the case, then we should try to well,
I guess so. I'm just wondering, like, what
I'm trying to validate something that is a really good question, Elise.
Yeah, because then theoretically it just like kind of like shrink things?
Yes.
But I guess, I don't know. Yeah. I guess we could design it for 1366 though, and we could just have the max width of the site be 1440 and we could just have it grow too, right? So maybe that's what we should do.
That's the only thing I guess where I'm feeling uncomfortable is that I can't see it on my.
Well, that's because it's 1450, because that's not a regular resolution that anybody has.
Oh.
So
okay.
1440 is the resolution that you have. So there's just like a little error with that, essentially. But I guess though we probably should design it for 1366 and then have it grow.
Well, here's
have the max width maybe of like that could happen, right? You could make the max width of the site 1440 and it would
exactly. Absolutely.
Okay. Cool.
Absolutely. What's also really cool there, Elise, is that perception is reality, and what now I know the answer to your question. I was like, wait a minute, why can't we do 1440? Now at least got my head all messed up. Mm-hmm. The answer to that is because 1440 we've declared now is the max width,
right?
Whereas the intent was that was the min width for the desktop.
Well, not necessarily the min width, but the most common. And then I think the min will probably be smaller. Or does it need to be the min?
I don't even think that there has to be a min, or else it's going to stay tablet for people who are 1360. Because it's not going to kick over into this guy until the breakpoint's not going to. Remember, like the minimum.
Well, I guess I'm saying, like, okay, what I'm understanding is that the breakpoints have nothing to do with what this number on right here is, right?
They do. Okay, so let's look at the mobile. The mobile has a minimum width. There's a CSS attribute called minimum width. Okay, mm-hmm. You can put it on elements, or you can put it on media queries, breakpoints. Mm-hmm. So we have a minimum width for the site.
Right, but I guess I'm saying, like, if you designed this for 1366, and then you made your CSS say that the max width was 1440 and the breakpoint was 1280, Bourbon and Neat would just shrink this would just shrink the design when you were down at 1280 and would just grow it when you went up to 1440, right? Like, There's no real reason to design for 1280.
That's true. And you're right about that. But the canonical answer is you don't design between breakpoints.
Okay. So we would want to be designing for the min.
At a breakpoint.
For the breakpoint?
That is consistent of min, max, and media queries, which are breakpoints.
Okay. So if we're suspecting that the breakpoint should be 1280, then we should probably design for 1280.
Precisely, because it should be able to stretch up to 1440 and look just right. And if it doesn't look just right, then that means we're missing a breakpoint.
Oh, okay.
That's what it really. I'm telling you, it'll probably take you when you go to sleep at night and you wake up and you're like, oh, I just keep stretching it larger, and when it looks
right. But so like the breakpoints could be. Yeah, it's not even like mobile, tablet, desktop, right? It's like
not even that. It's just like it looks great, looks okay, X
amount of breakpoints.
Looks shitty. Breakpoint.
Okay, so
looks beautiful, looks okay, looks kind of crappy, looks.
So normally, shitty. Like, would it be better, would it be better to just design the mobile site first, implement the mobile site, see when it looks bad, design the tablet? or design the next breakpoint.
Always.
Implement, design the next breakpoint. Implement,
Always.
design.
That's what you would do if we were really disciplined and had many iterations, but we're going to kind of befudge that process a little bit as just by just setting whatever numbers we kind of like to keep the ball moving. But you are absolutely.
But like in the future, if we have like in-house everybody and we're all like, you know what I mean? It's not like, so yeah, okay. That was what we would ideally do.
But you have to also be careful, at least, too, is that this is so new of a concept of developing this way. Many people that you'll meet, they are to the point where they smell, almost like you did, they smell something's new with Sketch, but they push back because they don't know about it, just like how humans do. They're like, well, I don't know about it, so it must not, I don't use it, it must not be cool. But the writing is on the wall, period.
Yeah. No, it's really cool. Okay. And then, yeah, you're right. Like, you don't have to design for, it should be designing for content, not designing for the devices.
Exactly.
I like that because also I see so many sites that like look a little bit weird. Like the responsive design, it's like too small in the max width. And I don't know, do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I could see how it would be better to have more breakpoints than just the two, or yeah, two. Anyway.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's not to say that this is the only or the best way. Like I said, I have strong opinions that are loosely held, but I will say, as far as with the team that you have around you, it's by doing it this way, it's almost like passing Cristiano Ronaldo a soccer ball.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, if we do it this way, like, oh, you're like, oh, damn, this looks pretty cool, sweet, sexy, and if we kind of do it another way, it'll wind up being like a little bit of a janky experience, because this is the way to do it. All these conventions are based around stuff people have been trying to do for the past 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really all I got.
Awesome.
That's really all I got, though. I just want to really ensure that I'm not overwhelming you with anything.
No, not at all. This is great.
Yeah, hopefully I didn't overwhelm you, Lizzie, or you, Nina, if you both made it this far.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks so much for your time, and over and out. Time to step out of the booth like Superman.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.